Today is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. It's about 11:30 p.m. and I have to go to sleep soon, hit the sack. But today I came across some somewhat confusing terms about climate change and carbonization in the air. So I'm going to read this short article that I've never read as part of my effort to understand those terms and while trying to practice English, trying to practice speaking English and also picking up some words, expressions, and sentences. Here we go. Abatable. The pathway from carbon neutral through net zero to climate positive. Published 9th March 2022. Last updated 16th June 2022. Abatable. Category sustainability. From carbon neutral through net zero to climate positive. So climate positive is our ultimate goal, and we start from carbon neutral. Then we will go through net zero to achieve that goal. What are the subtle differences between these three terms, and how can we make sure we use them correctly? Whether you manage an international business, a complex financial portfolio, or simply your personal affairs as a citizen, decarbonization of your activities requires understanding a number of important terminologies. Although the differences may seem subtle at first, this language is highly specific. Now I am lying down on the floor. It indicates very different outcomes in relation to impact on climate change. Indeed, it is within these differences that the battle for a sustainable planet will be won or lost. In this article, we will analyze three of the core terms in climate language: net zero, carbon neutral, and climate positive. Net zero, carbon neutral, and climate positive. The pathway towards decarbonization. To begin, let us calibrate our perspective. Rather than looking at these terms in isolation, let's consider them as phases of decarbonization pathway, with each term indicating a step towards the optimal outcome. In this context, the first step is carbon neutrality, then net zero, and finally climate positive. That's a pathway. Becoming climate positive is therefore our end goal, with carbon neutrality and net zero as benchmarks towards this goal. That's good summarization. Becoming climate positive is therefore our end goal, with carbon neutrality and net zero as benchmarks towards this goal. For the purposes of this article, we will begin this journey as a hypothetical European supermarket chain. Hypothesis. Hypothetical European supermarket chain. Our corporate entity has store locations throughout Europe, a global supply chain, as yet no climate impact agenda. Below, we will explore these three terms in relation to our hypothetical business as we transition towards creating a climate positive organization. Step 1. Carbon neutral. Becoming carbon neutral is our company's first step along the decarbonization pathway. If we are serious about this objective and not simply creating a marketing ploy, carbon neutrality means we are entering a phase of intense internal research and assessment. Our first objective is to define the exact size of our company's carbon footprint. Since our company is a supermarket, we have numerous commercial spaces, a complex global supply chain, and hundreds of global suppliers in agriculture and industry. Although the depth of this analysis is beyond the scope of this article, let's just say that for our business, this first step will require a steep learning curve. If you are interested to dive a little deeper, check out how the three scopes of emissions are categorized. After this process is complete and we have a clear picture of our company's carbon footprint, our next step is to limit our carbon emissions where possible and balance the remainder by paying for carbon offsets. Carbon offsets allow a company to fund the reduction of carbon from the atmosphere to compensate for our remaining emissions. Once we have achieved this, our company has become carbon neutral, which we can make official either with government administered schemes such as Climate Active in Australia, or if our country doesn't have a scheme or we operate across borders, expert independent verification across borders. Schemes. Step 2, net zero. Our next step on the path towards becoming climate positive is to reach for net zero. Having achieved carbon neutrality where our emissions have been assessed, calculated, limited where possible, and the remainder offset, net zero challenges us not to create any carbon emissions in the first place. Theoretically, this means that no carbon offsets are necessary because no carbon was generated in our operations. Carbon offsets. Reaching net zero is about taking a deep, holistic approach to decarbonization. It means an organization committing to scientifically validated targets that align with limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius above pre-industrial levels and investing beyond its value chain to create a low-carbon infrastructure accessible to all players in the industry. Fortunately, the Science Based Targets Initiative (SBTI) offers clear guidelines for reaching net zero. These include making clear commitments, setting targets openly with the stakeholders, and making voluntary or mandatory annual climate disclosures to track the organization's progress. As a supermarket chain, achieving net zero will be an impressive feat. It may involve radically transforming our supply chain, electrifying our logistics, investing in solar panels on our store roofs, or switching to renewable energy suppliers to power everything else. We may encourage our employees to bike and use public transportation and invest in new produce suppliers who, like us, heed the call of decarbonization and make their own operations net zero. Any remaining emissions will need to be balanced with offsets. If our supermarket is following the SBTi guidelines, this means limiting the use of carbon offsets to compensate for up to 5 to 10% of our total emissions, and only using carbon removal claims rather than relying on avoided emission claims. Avoided emission claims. Carbon removal claims. Carbon removal claims. Rather than relying on avoided emission claims. Avoided emission claims. Carbon removal claims. Avoided emission claims. In our current moment, this emission would be incredibly challenging for a supermarket chain with its complex array of suppliers and activities. Estimates show that roughly 25% of the world's emissions are hard to abate, meaning that reducing our emissions by 95% may not be possible or practical within today's technologies and constraints. It will take time to reach a credible net zero goal. However, as more suppliers heed the call to net zero, we anticipate these shifts will become easier and more practical in the journey towards becoming climate positive. For some companies, reaching net zero will be almost impossible. This shouldn't prevent them from instead focusing directly on the end goal or becoming climate positive. Step 3. Climate positive. Reaching zero emissions was an incredible achievement of our organization. We have invested above and beyond our direct business interests aligned with SBTi requirements and are now leading the way for other supermarkets and suppliers to decarbonize their own operations and supply chains. Let me drink some water. I need water. Where is my fucking water? Because I ate 2 ramens. I am very thirsty. Even after I downed 2 bottles of beer, I still feel thirsty. So that's why I'm gonna need a pint of water. Yeah, I would like to go and stay in America, Canada, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Iceland. Yeah. So, I just drank some water. Here we go. We have invested above and beyond our direct business interest, above and beyond our direct business interests, aligned with SBTi requirements, and are now leading the way for other supermarkets and suppliers to decarbonize their own operations and supply chains. Our customers, inspired by our engineering climate agenda, are more committed and numerous than ever. However, the atmosphere is still far off track. from a 1.5 Celsius global average temperature rise. Humans have simply emitted too much carbon into the atmosphere for too long. As an increasingly responsible organization, we have decided to take the next step, becoming climate positive. Climate positive, also known as carbon negative, means our organization is actively removing existing carbon from the atmosphere. This can be done in a variety of ways, from investing in further offsets to supporting suppliers and stocking products that are themselves carbon negative. In our sector of food retail, this might look like investing in farms using net regenerative agricultural practices, or in industrial food companies who are themselves climate positive through investing in their own industrial infrastructure. Climate positive above and beyond. Conclusion. Although the terms carbon neutral, net zero, and climate positive have been around for some time, it is only recently that they have started to become widely adopted and implemented. Therefore, regulatory frameworks that can properly validate and certify these claims have some catching up to do. The SBTi and other reliable private certifications are a positive step in this direction. There has certainly been some bad press surrounding carbon neutral claims in particular, with various high profile companies being accused of greenwashing. However, we believe the terms above should not be perceived negatively, but considered as work in progress, WIP, work in progress, and a step towards making positive climate contributions. Certainly, this new shared language and its definitions are pivotal for our organizations becoming climate positive in the fight against global warming. Get in touch if your company is on the path to net zero and can benefit from our diversified portfolio of pre-vetted carbon offsets. Good. Above and beyond, next step, a step towards carbon neutrality, net zero, and climate positive.